Hello, it's the 16th of October. Welcome along to Renew Every Morning. I'm Paul Anderson-Walsh, and we are walking through one of my books, my second book actually, which is called Safe and Sound. Today I'm going to turn to the subject of adoption, which for me has a particular resonance and power, and I hope that you're encouraged by what you hear me talk about today. The great Ralph, I can't say that today, the great Ralph Waldo Emerson is reported to have greeted friends whom he hadn't seen for some time with this question. And it's a brilliant question that he asks, and I've used it so many times in my professional life, but it's a lovely question. Let me give it to you. The question is this: what has become clear to you since we last met? Well, if I was to be asked that question by my old friends from my formative Christian years, I would answer that unequivocally. That the one thing that has become clear to me, and by the way, this I'm talking about when I wrote this nearly 15 years ago, so I suppose maybe 20 years ago, so I think about it now, I suspect some other things have become clear to me. In fact, if you listen to Steve McVeigh and I on our Grace Space, you'll hear us talking about this very subject in the first episode we did of that, which would have been the 5th of October. Anyway, that's besides the point. Actually, no, it wasn't the 5th of October, it was the Sunday before. Anyway, never mind. But the thing is this: I think what had become clear to me would be that the relationship between God and man is not at all what I'd first come to know. And I dare say that I may never ever fathom the depths of the possibility of that relationship this side of heaven. I don't presume that. To begin with, I had previously assumed that Christianity was a religion. That was my first mistake, my first understanding. A religion that was based on rules. I had supposed that it was transactional. So what I meant by that was that if I put in X, I could expect to take out X plus, i.e. Y. But to my delight, what I have discovered is that it's not a religion at all. It's a relationship based on love. And love is profound in its unconditionality. In a moment, I'll explain to you a somewhat unorthodox way I was persuaded about this truth. The journey that takes us from kind of calculation to contemplation really demands that we each go through our own valley of Baca. Have a look at that in Psalm 84 and you'll see what I mean. And in Baca, which means that place of worry or that place of dismay, we discover how so often through the overwhelming sorrow and loss that we find him. The kind of spirit, if you like, leads us out of our wilderness to be confronted by obstacles that our egos, our ingenuity simply cannot overcome. Certainly not in their own strength. However, when we meet these very unwelcome intruders, they come in like a flood. And when we wave the white flag of surrender, the Holy Spirit raises up his standard and we are moved from mere cognition to recognition. Job-like, Jacob-like. We are all alike in this regard. I'm sure of that. We discover the hidden treasures, the treasures that are hidden in the darkness. Now, I am loved, and love is unconditional. I am accepted, and that acceptance is unconditional. And I'll talk to you in another one of these sessions about literally accepting my acceptance, and that for me is one of the most profound issues in terms of, or blockers, or things that stop us from reaching maturity. But I am loved, and love is unconditional. I am accepted, and I have been forgiven of all of my sins, past, present, and future. And again, I have a whole another thing about what I think about sin these days. But this is when I was writing this formative book, so I may kind of disturb you with some of that. But the point here at the moment is to say I am safe and sound, and I am sure as sure can be that I am one spirit with Him. But more recently, I've come to see that there is more to the Christian life, much more. Christianity isn't so much about, I suppose, it's as much about destiny as it is about destination. See, we've all been taught, haven't we, that Christianity is about getting our ticket to heaven, our ticket to ride. But actually, there's something rather more interesting for us to get a hold of than that. And I really want to see if we can get to that together, because there is something very, very big here, very big indeed. We are, listen to the language of the apostle, we are heirs of God. But now, as the apostle Paul puts in his letter to the Galatians, I mean that the heir, as long as he is a child, is no different from the slave, though he's the owner of everything. But he's under guardians and managers until the day set by the Father. So just hold that for a second, because that's an important statement. You and I are heirs of everything, but yet we are children. And because we are children, we are under our own, we're under guardians, we're under a headship, if you like. Now, many of us who have embraced the grace message are only too aware that the one thing worse than seeing the message of freedom go unused is seeing it go misused. And that's heartbreaking. And we are charting a straight course between the kind of shipwrecking icebergs of anything goes license and nothing goes legalism. And we're headed through that middle ground to a place of responsibility, to a place of being able to respond. It is the grace of God, says Paul in Titus 2, that helps us to say no to unrighteousness. And this is the place where we're going to exchange a childish faith for a childlike one. And it's so interesting to me that even today in my business life, where I work in the realm of inclusion, I'm having to help my clients navigate these two icebergs, but they're icebergs of a similar ilk. Now, how the child heir comes to maturity and thus accesses his inheritance and exercises their authority is in essence the essence of what these books Until Christ is Formed are all about. That's really what we're trying to figure out. How do I come to maturity? How does that work? And the child's journey is going to be charted through these three phases of the Christian life that are set out by John in 1 John 2, 12 and 14. And these stages enumerate the child moving from the child phase, the teenage phase, to the father phase. Now, what's so interesting is that if I look back over, these 40 years, I never ever realised that now if I look back over, what would it be? 55 years, maybe a little bit more, who knows? I must confess to you that I never would have realised that the single most important lesson that I would ever learn about the nature of God, I'd learn across a breakfast table as a 9-year-old boy. Although it took me initially 2 decades to fully understand its significance, that lesson became the absolute cornerstone of my faith in Christ. Now, let me tell you what happened. Once upon a time, there was a boy, me. I was happy, and I was a popular child. I admit I showed very little interest in academic subjects. I kind of liked English. I was very good at sports. I lived in what was a pleasant but sleepy little town in Surrey called Addlestone, southwest of London, not just south of Heathrow Airport. Far more interesting places lay beyond Addlestone's boundaries, like Chertsey and Weybridge and Byfleet and Guildford. And I would often watch the Red Rover buses in these little quaint single-deckers with these really luxurious seats pass by the house, displaying their destinations on the front. And I wondered what it would be like to visit these far-off places, you know. However, Addlestone wasn't without its distractions. There was plenty to occupy an outward-bound 9-year-old like me. Together with my friends, Gerard and Peter, we'd play all day in the parks, the ponds, the woods, and of course the railway bridge, where we would dare each other to run across the bridge and when the train passed under it, and we'd disappear in the billowing smoke that would just surround us, that would come out of the chimney of the trains. Then on a rare occasion, when I was not out with my friends playing football, there were my elder brothers. There was Patrick. There was Desmond to play with sometimes. There was also my sister, who I loved a bit, Maureen. During rare moments, she'd prize herself away from my record collections. We'd play. Yet the best and most diverting thing of all was being able to go to work every other Saturday with my father. That was until he took ill. And he took early retirement, but it was sad, but life was good. There was not a cloud in the sky, or at least it was good until one particular night when I learned a most profound revelation about God. It was 1969. I remember it like it was yesterday. I'd just gone to bed. As was my usual ritual, I used to watch the car headlights just course across my room. And the headlights would chase up the wall, over the ceiling, and then flood the room with light, and then they would just disappear. The roar of the cars would fade as the drivers of the cars made their way to somewhere more exotic than Addlestone. I'd often imagine the stories of those people driving the cars. Sometimes I would weave very elaborate tales about them, where they were going, what they were up to. Spies were my big thing at the time, and most of them therefore were these fictitious secret agents that were carrying on their daring missions. It was an audacious mission of sorts, actually, which caused the car to come to an abrupt halt outside of our house about an hour after I'd gone to bed. I watched as usual as the car's headlight crawl up the far wall, but to my surprise, rather than tracing its familiar journey, it stayed there for a moment, then it vanished. How bizarre. So intrigued that I climbed out of bed and peered out of my window to see what was going on. Furtively, I just kind of pulled back the corner of the curtain just in time to see two people getting out of the car and heading towards our front gates. The doors shut with a thud, and the man motioned the woman towards our gate. She slightly gingerly opened it, and then she seemed to brace herself, almost psyching herself up in the way a trainee door-to-door salesman might do for a first house call. And then striding up the path, the man staying back remained at the gate. She rang the bell and rapped the door simultaneously. Big mistake. My mother did not like disturbances, and it was my mother who opened the door. I was surprised when the conversation ensued for several minutes. The longer the conversation went on, the louder and the more agitated the muffled sounds began. So whatever was going on downstairs, I wasn't to be missed. So I decided to creep down the landing and peer down the stairs to get a better vantage point. Now, when I got there, Desmond, to my surprise, was already there. Shh, go back to bed, he said. But before I had a chance to say anything or make any noise... Yeah, who is it, though? Who is it? I don't know. Some mad woman. She's demanding to see me, Desmond replied. I could just make her out, but I'd never seen her before. She stood in front of my mother, who framed the door forbidding her entry. My mother had been joined by my father at the door. I hadn't, noticed just how frail he looked. He was a shadow of his former self. He'd been ill for a long time now, and we saw less and less of him as he spent more and more of his time confined to bed downstairs in the parlour. He was no longer able to climb the stairs. Supported by his walking frame, my father had gone to lend his support to my mother. This must be serious. I know my rights, demanded the woman. You have no rights, my mother boomed, drowning out the woman's voice. But I'll give you this, you got a brass neck coming here. With that, my mother slammed the door in the woman's face and turned on her heels. Without even shooting a glance at her, she said, "You two get back to bed." How do adults know things like that? Anyway, I've always suspected that my mother had eyes in the back of the head. Desmond and I scurried off to bed. The man and the woman didn't leave immediately. I watched them from the tiny corner of my curtain, which I'd pulled back. They were locked in earnest debate on the garden path. The man seemed to encourage her to leave, and for some moments we didn't want to do it, but eventually she kicked over a number of my mother's plant pots and then they left. Well, now the house just fell quiet, and Desmond must be thinking as he lay in bed, what was this strange event? Well, he's my what? I wondered as well. You can be sure I was going to question my mother in the morning. Well, there was an uncharacteristic sense of unease at breakfast in the morning. Desmond and I sat alone. My mother occupied herself with her chores, and she was clearly avoiding us, and Desmond didn't seem too keen to want to engage her either. I, on the other hand, was possessed of a refreshing ghostiness, so I wanted to know, Mother, who was the lady who came last night? That's no lady, she snapped. Why did you kick over the flower pots? It doesn't concern you, Paul. It's adult stuff. Besides, you're late for school. I kicked Desmond under the table. Go on, ask her. Desmond cleared his throat. Ma? Desmond always called her Ma when he was trying to inveigle his way into her favours. What do you mean? That lady said he's my mother knew it was absolutely useless, and so she had no right to withhold the information anyway, so she had kept it to herself for so long. So she undid her apron and she sat down and she said, Boys, I've something to tell you. She hesitated. Although you're both my sons, you're kind of not my sons. Well, she began really esoterically and continued in a very tautological explanation. And she said, look, well, actually, Desmond is. She seemed very muddled, but I guess there's no way to say this kind of stuff easily. Look, what I mean is this. Desmond, you're not my natural son. You're my adopted son. That means you're as good as my own child, if not even more, because you're legally mine. And as my legal responsibilities, ironically, you have more rights than Jill and Jean, my real children. My head was spinning. What on earth was unraveling in front of me? It was clear that we had to get to the bottom line, at least from my perspective. My mother continued, the woman who came last night was your natural mother. She came to take you away, but I sent her packing because you're not her child anymore. It was as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Desmond was 4 years older than I am, and he sat dumbfounded. You're not my mother? No, I'm not your mother. That's the point. No, I mean, I am your mother. That's the whole point. The revelation was just too much for Desmond to process. He got up and he left the kitchen. My mother called after him, It's all right, Desmond. Don't worry. You're safe and sound with us. You're not going anywhere. Nobody can ever take you away. Well, the kitchen door slammed, and moments later, we heard the footsteps stamping upstairs above our heads, and I looked at my mother demandingly. At that point, her attacking me seemed the best form of defence, and though I thought I was surely in for it, having opened Pandora's box, yet my mother was not angry with me, no. The disclosure seemed to have liberated her somehow. She looked relieved, and instead she put her hand on mine and she said, Paul, I'm only grateful it wasn't your mother who came last night, because if it had been, I would have had to give you back. You see, Desmond is adopted. You're only fostered. Your father and I live in fear of losing you and have done all these years. You've been with us since you were 3 months old. Miss Damon says you're not even that. Miss Damon says who's your social worker, that we've nothing to worry about. Your parents are never going to come and get you. Not after abandoning you like that. My foster mother spoke as if I was aware I'd been abandoned at birth, but like in the tale of Chicken Licken, the sky had fallen in. Well, I will tell you more about this when we come back tomorrow, because I should really pause. I've overkept you, so I'll hold the rest of this story and the what are we going to do about it until tomorrow. But suffice to say, my brother Desmond was adopted, and I just want you to hear my mother's words one more time. Don't worry, you're safe and sound with us. You're not going anywhere. Nobody can ever take you away. That's for you, young man. We'll pick that up tomorrow. All right, God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye.